was all ruse.
Yeah, the whole thing
I
was,
think it was all decided before then.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's get started here. All right. So last week we left off. We mentioned that fruit was not an eligible candidate to be a food that gets you across the finish line for what's called a seuda for our purposes of kiddush bimkom seuda. I think we had read most, if not all, of Chavav in the Mishnah Berurah. But just using it as a to hold up my phone. But what we saw was that at the end that there was an opinion of the Hilchot Giborim who held that even peiros, even fruits, were enough to be considered a Suda Shabbos. Because why? All Sudos on Shabbos are considered keva, meaning it's a Shabbos meal. You're sitting. It's a meal that you know you can describe it as having some sort of permanence around the table. So we discussed
Make a separate bracha for fruit for dessert. It's got to be more substantial than just that, right?
So that's ideal. Yes, we talked about that. But if let's say you only have fruit, let's say you're making kiddush, here after shul's over one time, and there's only fruit. There's only a fruit platter. Is that enough to say that kiddush is a valid kiddush? So according to one opinion, the Hilchot Giborim answer is yeah. If you don't have anything else, that's enough. That can count because of this principle that any Suda Shabbos, any Shabbos meal is considered keva, meaning keva is like when you're sitting together, when you are dining together. There's an element of I'm not eating on the run, and if that's the case, then even fruit can count. Why? Not because of the fruit, but because it's Shabbos. And Shabbos turns the fruit into like, okay, this is a relaxing situation where we're all sitting together. Even though the situation I just described, everyone's standing and kind of on the move. But nonetheless, Shabbos has that power. But the end of that Mishnah Berurah, do we read this one, Chafov?
yes.
Yeah, we read. Okay, so we saw though at the end that the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch didn't agree. And we can rely on this opinion of the Hilchot Giborim only in the morning. If we have no other choice, then we can rely on it. But otherwise, don't. And at night, you certainly cannot rely on it at all. All right, we saw, I think, also Chav Zayin, right? Did we read Chav Zayin? This was about, we read that. Okay, that we did the Shir Revius, and then maybe some of those all. If you want to rely on wine as your Suda, you have to have another cup of wine aside from the Kiddush cup of wine in order for that to count as your Suda. There's the Kiddush, and then there's the meal. What's the meal? The meal is then another cup of wine. Again, and we said also many hold that Kiddush does not at all count. The wine does not at all count for Suda. So best not to rely on it ideally, but you have upon whom to rely. You have the Gaonim in your back pocket if you need to. And that was where the whole discussion about the bris milah came in, about the wine of the bris milah. If you hold it to meal, then you can go ahead and make kiddush. But the Rama, I think the Rama's essential ikar psak is that you can rely on the wine being the suda, but he says that the minhag was to give it to a tinok, was to give it to a child, in order to avoid the whole question.
I said that.
You said that? Okay, so the Rama copied you. Okay.
Ron,
Yes, Simeon, go ahead. Good morning.
good morning. We learned that Ein Kiddush Ela B'Makom Suda. So how can you plug that hole simply by drinking wine?
So there are achronim who agree with you and say you can't. That seems like you're finding a loophole here. Others will say that no, wine is soed es halev, same word as suda, right? So it's from the same root, and so therefore it because of that it has the enough of a property and quality that it could be considered suda. Again, I don't think we like to ideally rely on that because there are opinions that say it doesn't work. But again, if that's all you have working for you, for whatever circumstance, you have the gaonim to rely upon. All right, so yeah, Richie.
Your family full of gluten-free people,
Yes.
and they rely on Vermont.
Well, but in terms of the makom the Suda, you're gonna have
the kiddush in shul. They can't eat any of the cakes or the crackers. So just drink over beers or wine.
So then they need to drink, right? Correct. They can't just rely on the kiddush that was made by the rabbi and that he drank. You can do that if you're going to have some hizonos, but if you're going to rely on that kiddush, you have to consume something else. So you have to dafka have some of that wine or grape juice. Not that same wine. Some other grape juice or wine would be enough to consider it makom seuda. Right. So if you're gluten free, it's a good point.
But I guess this really only applies if you're not going to make kiddush at home, right? Meaning, if you make kiddush at home, then it's sort of all a little bit irrelevant because then you're going to eat right afterwards, right? So
what do you?
That's the proper way to do it.
Right. But I'm saying this idea of figuring out, oh, I have to eat X is really only if you're not going to make kiddush at home, right? Because otherwise you will do it at home.
Well,
You don't have to.
But if you want to eat at the kiddush here, right? Then you have to, yeah.
Sure. But in terms of you don't have to do this. It's just if you're not going to make kiddush elsewhere, then that's what we're talking about.
Right.
So the purpose of the kiddush in shul is so that you're not fasting, right? So if you're going to hang out at the kiddush till after 12 in winter, 1 in the summer, it's a long time of kiddush. But
I remember the days when shul used to go till 12.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Shul does get out
when I was your age, shul was a lot longer.
So you're not allowed to fast on Shabbat. They will make a kiddush, so you're not fasting. So,
Right.
And then so then you're making
Right.
kiddush, and then you can't just make kiddush and not eat, so then you have to eat something.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go home, but I mean, you can't just walk into the kitchen and eat something without making kiddush.
That's right.
You can't eat anything.
Correct. You can't eat anything. You can't even have water. Once you drive it already, you can't have water even. All right. Let's go to Sif Vav now. Okay. Up on top. Did we do Vav? We didn't do Vav. No. Okay. Here we go. These kids are gonna miss you when you go to camp. V'im kiddush b'veiso, v'shama shcheno v'shulchano aruch lefanav. Yotze bo. D'shapir habe makom suda. Ukigon sheniskaven hashomeh latzes mashmiel lahotzi. So if you make a kiddush, in your house, this is amazing, right? And this could happen. It very well could happen. And your neighbor hears the kiddush, and their table is set in front of them. They can fulfill and discharge their obligation of kiddush in that way because that's for them makom suda. They're sitting in front of their table ready to eat. You're at your table ready to eat. They hear you making kiddush through the window, and and they're listening. They can be yotze, but of course there's an important piece here to that. For example, when does that work? Sheniskaven hashomeh, the listener is thinking and he wants to be yotze with the kiddush. Umashmiya lahotzi, and the one who is being heard wants to discharge the other's obligation. So imagine you have some paper-thin walls between apartments, which could never happen in buildings that we've all lived in, right? And you knock on the wall and say, I'm making kiddush. Great, we're ready. We're listening, right? That's right. In theory, that could work. I know that seems like a crazy idea and probably not. Correct. They're on their mir pesach. They're on their mir pesach, right? And they're about to make kiddush. They're like, oh, we're going to listen to your kiddush. Oh, sure, no problem. And they're going to have separate meals, but they're right next to each other. No problem. They make their kiddush. They say amen. They get right down to business of hamotzi, washing hamotzi. So it's all good. Yeah, come on. It's all good.
They probably could join the Zima at the end of the.
Maybe, but they're on like a different time schedule,
Right.
We're actually going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that.
So
For sure, Savri, yeah.
You're saying Savri, which means pay attention.
Correct.
So that Savri connects the meal, and so they could be Yotze with your kiddush, but I mean, we're assuming they could also be Yotze to be part of the same Zimun. because now they've had the kavanah to be
together.
part of the same meal.
Possible.
Yeah.
It's very. It is possible. You might run into it again, depending on the situation, space-wise. Mainly run a space problem.
Yeah, or if they
You know, like, can you see each other? Can you? Because here it wasn't. They could. It doesn't sound like they could see each other, right? It's visham ashcheno. You just hear them. That's why let's say there's an open window, right? And my I live in the same building, and the neighbor, across is making kiddush, and he's a chazan, so he makes kiddush,
So
right?
when we check out the month, though, we'll have to come back to this.
Right.
The idea of making a zima starts with the savri.
Well, correct. That if you start a meal together, right, then or you end the meal together, or where there's there's this idea that you are connected, then it opens the door for.
So when you're saying savri, are you just the kavanah is just that people could be yotzei in the kiddush, or that you can make a zima out of it?
I think you're trying to draw attention to everybody to be yotzei. We're going to actually talk about that today in the context of making the hamotzi, following kiddush, and that there's a minhag to say birshus, right? So this is also similar, and so actually this is going to be explicitly talked about here today, but hopefully we'll get to it. Mishnah Berurah. So we'll do that.
Rob, you said in your review, in your re-explanation, that if they're in the same building, what we just learned was the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote in the 1500s.
Yes.
And I have difficulty with this because in a previous year, one or two ago, we learned the concept of Gag Echad.
Yeah.
And if you have a neighbor next door to you and he's in a separate house, how can you be yotzei with his kiddush under the rubric of Gag Echad?
So the idea of Gag Echad, that being under one roof, is how you define that your kiddush needs to be in the same place as your suda. And that is going to be the case here. Even in my example of the neighbor across the alleyway is making kiddush, you're like, what do you mean? We're in totally separate apartments. Or maybe even under a different roof, exactly. But the difference is that here, that's why it's important that Shulchano Aruch Lefanav, that their own table is set. They're going to have their challah, they're going to have their chicken soup, whatever they have. It's all ready to go in front of them. And the Gag Echad concept, well, that doesn't guide the principle of the rules of Shomeya, of being able to, have kavanah, to be yotzei to somebody's bracha, and the vice versa, that the mashmiya, the one who's being heard, has kavanah to be motzi. That's a separate principle, and that's just helping my kiddush get off the ground. So I'm yotzei kiddush in the place where I'm going to have my meal, where therefore I had kiddush b'mokom suda under a Gag Echad. In fact, not under Gag Echad, but also makom. I'm going to eat where I'm hearing my kiddush. It just I'm allowed to this is one of those things when we teach those of you who are more experts at secular law can tell me. As long as the law will speak in the extreme, so that we can understand, we can extrapolate the regular principle that play here, or the normal case, but we don't teach the extremes. This is certainly teaching the extreme that you can be yotzei by just hearing, not being in the same spot as the others who are making this kiddush. So the idea, the principle of being yotzei can extend beyond, the very place in which you, where you are. So that's what's at play here, and that's why kiddush b'mokom suda still exists because the kiddush is being heard and being yotzei in the place where they're going to be eating their meal.
So we should have no difficulty whatsoever. The rabbi makes kiddush in shul, and then everybody goes to the social. We should have no difficulty.
No, that's different, because the people who are being yotzei, the kiddush, they are moving. Where the people were when they heard the kiddush on the mirpeset, they didn't move. They washed their hands right there. They ate their challah there. They stayed in the same places where they were yotzei kiddush. When you're talking about moving within one building, that's the people who made the kiddush. They're moving. And that's when we had some of the halachic questions that we dealt with in previous shiurim.
Okay.
Yeah, Simeon doesn't like that rule. It's okay. That's a hard one. That's a if you
Rob, it's not that I don't like it. There has to be consistency. There
right.
has to be consistency.
Yeah.
If God Echad gets you off the difficulty of moving around when you want to make a kiddush and you're going to eat in a different place, and you can get off the hook with this Gog Echad concept,
Right.
Now you seem to be throwing it out. It's not well, whatever.
Yeah. Gag Echad is guiding Kiddush B'Makom Suda, and I would say that there's a general rule of brachos, of being Yotzei brachos, that can be in different places. So you're being Yotzei the brachos of Kiddush, then now Kiddush B'Makom Suda is happening under one roof. So there is some consistency. I'm happy to talk more offline about that one, but I think I actually think it is at least internally consistent. Okay, Chavches in the Mishnah Berurah here. V'in Kiddush. V'hu adin afilu lechatchila yachol lekadosh b'veiso. You can. It's lichatchila. Okay, so Simeon, cover ears. He's not gonna like this. Okay, so lichatchila, you can go ahead and make kiddush in your house. Kidei sheyishma shcheno hadar b'bayis acher. Your neighbor is living in the next door house, and I'm a chazan, so I'm gonna project to the next house. And I gave him a knock when I was walking back home from shul. I knocked on the door. I said, 5 minutes from now, open your windows, and you're gonna listen to kiddush. I'll have you in mind. Great. So they're ready to go. I'm ready to go. And here's where it really can be helpful. If the neighbor doesn't know themselves how to make kiddush, let's take it a rule further. If the neighbor doesn't know how to make kiddush, and I want to help them, but it's raining outside. I don't want to go back outside. So I just tell them, hey, open the window. I'll make kiddush. I'll have you in mind. So if they don't know how to make kiddush, we said that you can be motzi others even if they're not eating with you. So I'm the neighbor. I'm not even going to be eating, but I just want to be a nice, helpful neighbor. So I don't have to even eat. We said that in Sif Daled. We talked about this. You can help people. If they don't know how to make kiddush, I can make kiddush for them, even if I'm not going to eat there. Right? Od kastav hamagin avram tehu adin kishmikadosh al hapas. If they're going to eat bread, they don't know how to make motzi lechem in aretz, and they don't have any wine. They open their window, they pull up their window. I pull up my window. I could scream, the kiddush and hamotzi across there for them because they don't know how to make the brachos for kiddush and hamotzi, and that would be lechatchila. He says here, fine. Again, if they know how to make kiddush on their own, they should make kiddush on their own. But that goes back to a Sif Dalet discussion. Chav Tes, the Shulchano Aruch. Okay, the table there. His table is set in front of him. Nira delav dafka. Doesn't have to be dafka. The table is actually set. Elahu adin kisherotze la'aroch hashulchan le'echol alter gam kein mahani. Rather, the law is also that if they want to set the table to eat immediately, or even if they hear the kiddush and they're like, okay, I'm going to bring out all the plates, that's fine too. As long as they have in mind, we talked about this earlier in the Simon, as long as I have in mind that I want to eat coming up in the next few minutes. Right? That was their frame of mind when they heard the kiddush. That's fine as well. But we talked about in the Ramah and Sif Gimel earlier in this Simon. Now, Lamed, this is not a new rule. The idea of being motzi others if they have in mind, you have in mind, they have in mind. That's not a new principle. And he says here, Lav dafka b'inyan zeh. This is not just in our situation that's being described here. This is if you're sitting around the table and I want to make kiddush for all of you, my guests. You need to listen to me and have in mind to be motzi, to be yosei, and I have in mind to be motzi all of you. That's even a regular situation. Where we make kiddush, not just between buildings. Okay, bottom line over here in the Mishnah Berurah. So Friday night. So we talked about this also some time ago that the kiddush that's made by the shliach tzibur, or in our situation the rabbi, on Friday night. Lo yatsa shomea afilu im yiskaven latzeis v'hu rotze lisod achar kach. the listener is not Yotze, even if he has kavana to be Yotze, and he has in mind to eat there, unless the shliach tzibur has in mind to be motziim. Okay?
No, I don't understand that.
Okay, explain.
No, I just don't understand. If the Bisman Enu,
Yeah.
if you were in shul and the rabbi makes kiddush, we learned again in several shiurim ago that when he comes home, there's actually a conflict as his wife is waiting for him because she has the greater obligation to make kiddush. How could he throw that out and it's not going to affect his status of having fulfilled his obligation of saying the kiddush?
So I sort of see there's two things here. One is that there's a minhag to make kiddush on Friday night because there used to be a situation where guests would come through the town. We still hold on to that minhag here, by the way, in this shul, right? That there's a kiddush that's made on Friday night, even though no one's eating here. So the case that's being described here is what is it if what's the situation if someone is eating in the shul, and they're listening to the kiddush that's being made on Friday night, and they're like, okay, I'm having in mind I want to be yotze the kiddush because I'm going to eat here. Problem is that the stam das of the person making kiddush, and I can say as the one who often makes that kiddush, I have no one in mind when I'm making that kiddush. I'm not making it with in mind that anybody's going to eat there. Maybe I have in mind that the kids are going to drink or that I'm going to drink a little bit, but I'm not having in mind that their guests are going to eat there. So that's why all he's clarifying is here is that if somebody wants to yotze with that kiddush in shul, they need to go over to the person making the kiddush and say, hey, can you have me in mind? Because usually that's kiddush bismanenu doesn't mean anything for anybody anymore, because there aren't usually orchim eating in the shul who are passing through town. Because even if there are people passing through town, they end up getting set up to eat someone's house, eat at someone's house. So that's all I think he's saying here in the Mishnah. Where you're talking about whether you fulfilled on a biblical level the mitzvah of being mekadesh the Shabbos through tefillah or whatever, and then how does that play out when the husband, let's say, more often than not, comes home and the wife didn't daven yet? How does that play out? That's, I think, a separate situation of and then we talked about that still Kol Yisrael Ravens Elazeh, one person being mostly others. Maybe the mitzvah of kiddush, over wine is different in nature than just simply using your own words, and therefore there's an extra added element of the mitzvah that's rabbinic in nature. When it comes to using the wine in addition to the not just using your words. So I feel like those are two separate things. I think that's what the Mishnah was talking about here.
You know what you did?
To make
1 second.
somebody who won't make kiddush or doesn't want to make kiddush,
Yeah.
make it shul to give them a chance to be yotze in kiddush.
Yes, but then we have to have food with there.
You have to have food.
Because for them it has to be makom seuda. If they don't know how to make kiddush, I can make kiddush for them, but they need to be in their makom seuda. That's why I talk about like a rabbi goes to the hospital or nursing home makes kiddush for them. Their food is on their hospital tray table. Like they're going to eat their meal there, so I can go from room to room and make the kiddush, even though I'm not going to be yotze. But for them, they have no strength to make kiddush. They may not have the knowledge to make the kiddush, whatever it is. But they have to have that has to be their makom seuda.
What if you drink the wine?
If they drink the wine, that's a clever solution. That's
the reason I'm asking is because
that's what I do, by the way, when there's no kids.
When I was growing up, we had a small shul in São Paulo that I went to, and there was an older gentleman. All I remember is Friday night he was waiting for the kiddush, and when the kiddush was done, they gave him the wine so he could drink. He wanted to drink the wine,
and so now
couldn't afford to buy wine. So.
Right. So now you understand what they were trying to do. I don't know what his situation was the rest of the time, but what they're trying to do is help him fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush makom seuda. Because if he drinks the wine, according to the Gaonim, that's enough to be considered seuda. So if someone who's very poor who might not be able to, that was perhaps their attempt at helping him fulfill this mitzvah. If I had to be guessing, I don't know for sure. And that's why if I make the kiddush on Friday and there are no kids, I will drink it, and I'll drink a revius, or drink enough of a shear because at least that's kiddush b'makom suda. Otherwise, what am I doing? I'm drinking wine in no man's land. It's not really kiddush, but it's not suda. So what if I don't have my suda here? And what am I relying on? I'm relying on literally nothing. So I will drink the minimum size for a shear in order to fulfill, according to the Gaonim, kiddush b'makom suda. If there are kids, okay, so I can get out of this whole situation because the Bar Perguffin was, and that's already a little bit. The Beis Yosef would be smiling down upon us from Shamayim because he already said he wanted to get rid of the minhag. So you don't understand it. Why? When people aren't, there are no guests. If there are guests, okay, I hear make the kiddush, but this minhag from the time of the Gemara should be continued to be. It's a lot. I don't know. In Israel, is this a common minhag in Israel? In the shuls in Israel? No, I don't think so. It's the chutzlar. I don't know. In Israel, I don't think it's such a common minhag.
I've never seen it.
There you go. I don't know. Yeah, Simeon. Sorry, you were saying before. What did I do? I pulled some trick, right?
Rav, based on your explanation and the notion that people no longer use the shul as a motel and a restaurant, we should not be including kiddush as part of Tefillat Ma'ariv on a Friday night.
Yeah, you're not the first one to say this. As I said before, the Beis Yosef, I thought the tours not. I don't remember all my learning from years ago. But they yell, kick, and scream. We shouldn't have kiddush in shul anymore. This is not a good minhag anymore. So,
Kids are
right.
They're making the poor rabbis making the kiddush.
Right, exactly. Used to be the Shliach Tzibur has to do it. Now I took it all on myself. But yes, you're absolutely right, and that's why there are many shuls. By the way, in Israel, I don't think it's the common minhag, but I think there are some chutzlar shuls also that don't do this because of this. Why are we getting involved with this business? Let's not get involved with it. There's something sweet to the minhag. It comes from a good place, but definitely brings some halachic challenges to it. Let's take a look now at Zion. All right. There, can you set up actually for me? Thanks. All right. Yesh omrim she'ein mekadshin ela le'or haner. There are those who say you should only make kiddush by the light of the candles. Okay. V'yesh omrim she'ein hakiddush talui b'ner. There are those who say that the kiddush is not dependent upon the candles. Okay. V'im nehene, turn the page. V'im hu nehene bechatzer yoser mipnei ha'avir or mipnei ha'zvuvim. Mekadesh bechatzer ve'ochel shamaf al pi she'ein aroa haner. Shehaneros la'oneg nitzabu v'lo litzar v'hachi nistabra. So if he benefits in the chotzer more because of the air, so I want to make kiddush and I want fresh air, or there's flies in the house, I guess. So I don't want to be, so I want to go outside. I'm tired of all the insects. Mekadesh, I can make kiddush in the chotzer, and eat there, even though I don't see the nair. So if I want to eat on the porch, whatever. Even though I can't see the candles, it's okay. Because why? The candles were made to create oneg for me, delight, and not pain. And this makes sense. It's nice if you can make kiddush by the candles, enjoy the beauty of the candles, but if the situation in the house is such that I'm not going to enjoy, so you don't have to see the candles when you make the kiddush. It's a nice idea. Okay, take a look at Lamed Aleph. Mekadesh bechotzer. That you make kiddush in the chatzer and then you eat in the chatzer. We talked about this. You can't make kiddush in the house and then go eat in the chatzer. That's not under Gag Echad. We said maybe you can get away with it if you can see the spot, but it's not ideal. Okay. Lamed Beis v'hachi mistabra v'hainu v'mitztar harbe. This is, when does it make sense that you can make kiddush not next to the candles? When you have a lot of pain, not a little bit of discomfort, a lot of discomfort. The ilav hachi tzarich lechol dafka b'makom haner. Otherwise, you should eat where the candles are burning. And why? Because you want to benefit from the candles. That's the whole reason you make kiddush by the candles. It's supposed to bring shalom bayis. But you have, in order to make the bracha of the Hadlik National Shabbos, You need to benefit from the lights. So if you're never going to use the lights, you're just going to make it. You're going to light and then go outside. You're not going to enjoy the lights of the candles. Maybe it's a question of the bracha was a bracha levatala. So if there's no big reason, try to eat by the candles. That's why people light candles in the room where you eat. That's where this comes from, that minhag. The Prima Gadim Shemitzadeh, and the Prima Gadim says here, the Yoser Tov Shiyikadesh Babayis V'Yochal Ma'ad V'Achar Kach Yigmor Sudasa V'Chatzer. He says, I got a better solution. I'll find a middle solution, middle ground. Kiddush at home, eat a little bit, and then finish your meal in the Chatzir. That way you have Kiddush Malkom Suda. You had in mind I was going to go outside to the porch or whatever, and therefore you get Kiddush Malkom Suda. V'ayin B'Sim Reish Samach Gimel. Sif Tes, Masha Kosiv Sham Me'inyan Zeh, where it says over there, by the way, and this is comment number 41 for those of you using the same edition I am. By the way, it's like such a cheat sheet, say, oh, go look over there. And this edition always tells you what it says over there, so I don't have to go looking. Right? And there it says, V'chenim b'shah shehidlik es haneros b'bayis hayam chashuch ktas v'yishtamesh b'neros l'tzorach ha'seuda. If, let's say, when the candles are lit, it's already dark. It's very before sunset, and maybe it's a cloudy day also, and I use the candles to something that's l'tzorech ha'seuda. I'm preparing a salad. I'm preparing, I don't know, whatever it is. So there we had said that then it's not a bracha levatala. Even if you're going to eat your whole meal in the chatzar, you use the light of the candles to do something that related to the meal, even if it was a preparation piece for the meal, right? You were distributing or making the plates, getting them ready, putting the food on different plates, and the candle lights were helping me see it. Again, today with all the lights that we have in our houses, that we use the candles is already a big question. Do we use the candle light? So that's why there's a minhag. We talked about this, that there's a minhag when you make kiddush to look over to the candle light when you're making the kiddush to benefit from the candles. And one should try at some point to look over at the candles and enjoy their beauty, because whether we're truly getting the light from them is already very questionable. That we're benefiting in that sense. Okay.
Is there a tradition among some to use less lights in that area and to sort of use the candles? Because you're in that room, meaning
all the other lights are on too, and
right? We use a lot of lights in that room.
Yeah,
a lot of lights.
Hey, whoever wants the table to shine,
Meaning you don't get any use of the candles for their light.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if there's such a minute. There's that people who try to, dafka keep things dimmer in the live. I don't know. Does anybody here do that? No, I don't. I think that, and I think some people have dafka in mind that when they will turn off lights before Shabbos and then turn them back on before they will make the bracha for the and light the actual Shabbos candles. And they have in mind that when they put those lights on, it's l'chavod Shabbos. So. That way there's some Shabbos element to those light coming from the bulbs. What is it? It's 8:10? It's 8:20 actually. We have 5 minutes, then I have to stop because I have to take my kids to go see their their day camp. Okay, let's start a new simon though. Reish Ayin Dalet. So we finished after many months of talking about Kiddush and all the what kind of wine and where can you make the Kiddush and what are all the details of how the laws of Kiddush? So we have completed all the laws that relate to Kiddush, and now we're going to move on to what you do after Kiddush, which is making.
Is that going to be on the test?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. The when we get to the end of Chelek Gimel, there's going to be a huge final exam, and it's all on Shabbos, all Hilchot Shabbos. Okay. I had to suffer like that with smicha, so you all have to do it too. Okay. No, don't worry. There's no tests. Okay. If you want, you can study for them. Okay. We should. By the way, you should know a side point. So the rabbi who I interned for in Highland Park, actually, Rabbi Ariel Schneider also was an intern there last year. I was there over a decade ago. He used to have a Gemara shir. And he twice a year gave a test to the members of the shir. He would give a test, and he would grade it, and then he would give it to the spouse of the as oftentimes it was the husband. I guess your husband did an amazing job. What an excellent Talmud. He read on the test. 93. and he'd actually grade the test. And they were, and actually, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what happened with that. But this one didn't do well. I didn't go to the shir, but like, he had for years. He graded the tests. He graded tests.
Can we do that?
And you know what he said? It gave a certain level of chashivas to the shir that people actually felt like they had like this responsibility to study for it. But they didn't want to show up and get a 55 on the test, so they actually studied. If I have a little more time, I would do it. By the way, it's AI now. By the way, I should be just doing it. I should just All right. Dine b'tzias tapas b'Shabbos. So the laws of breaking bread on Shabbos. Okay. Sif Aleph. Botzea al shtei kikaros. Parentheses shlemos. Okay. She'oche shtehen b'yodo uvotzea hatachtona. So you're supposed to break bread over 2 whole loaves. Hey, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to hold both of them in your hand, and then you make the hamotzi. After you make the hamotzi, you break the bottom one. Okay, now we're about to get into some Kabbalah. Okay, I'm not in my comfort zone when I'm in the Kabbalah world. Okay, v'davka b'leil Shabbos. This is specifically on the eve of Shabbos, Friday night meal, that you break the bottom one. About b'yom HaShabbos u o b'leil Yom Tov. Whether it's Shabbos day or Yom Tov night, botzea al ha'elyona, you break the top one. V'hatam hu al derech ha'kabbalah. And the reasons behind all this breaking this one, the top one, the bottom one, is all through Kabbalah. So I looked at the Mishnah Berurah, no Kabbalah and explanations. I look at Aruch HaShulchan and no Kabbalah explanations. I say, why are they hiding from me? So I looked it up. What was that? I'll tell you in 2 years when I'm allowed to study it. Yeah, it's like mystical teachings, deeper teachings that are not easy to understand. I looked it up a little bit. I literally actually, by the way, I searched on Google. I said, can someone explain the Kabbalah here that's behind? So apparently, there's a Kabbalistic teaching that at night, Bnei Yisrael are underneath HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And so really when we eat the bottom one, it sort of represents where we are as the Jewish people are eating, right? And that, here, I pulled it up here. There was a Chaim Tabaski, somebody gave the most common is that we cut the bottom one, which represents the position of the Jewish people, right? At night, we are below Hashem, who created the world who created the world is the active presence at night. So he's on top. Right, as emphasized in the tefillah at night, while in the day we emphasize the receiving of the Torah, that we were active. So we moved up. We were up on top, taking an active role, whereas the Kadosh Baruch Hu at night is the active one, and we're sort of hiding underneath. And apparently, the minhag of Shalosh Shudas is the 2 loaves next to each other, not on top of each other, because the end of Shabbos, the idea is that there's a harmony between Am Yisrael and the Shekhinah. At night, it's darkness, it's whatever, and we're underneath. Daytime, it was Har Sinai. We were active in the morning. Yeah, we took our active role of accepting Kabbalah, Torah. The Shus was explained side by side. If you want more color about Kabbalah, about this particular piece, I don't know if I can give you more. I'm being honest. I'm just limitations are, but I think that's where it comes from. The idea that the Jewish people are, we're not the active players at night, so we're eating where we eat our place. Our place is underneath at night. Our place during the day, we take a more active role. And then I guess the Shalosh Shudas, I don't know if we're on the right or the left. I'm not sure, but we're next to each other with the Shekhinah. Okay, so that's a little word about the Kabbalah piece here. Do you have anything, by the way, in there, Steve, about the Kabbalah?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Nobody. It's like I hate to go digging for this one. Like what is the Kabbalah? Everyone mentions that it comes from Kabbalah. Aruch HaShulchan knows that it's Kabbalah. Kabbalah. But what's the Kabbalah here? I'm not. I gave you what I think I found. I'm doing a little bit of research. Yeah.
I learned a very interesting variation of that notion, and that is that you slide the top challah back a little, and you slice the bottom, but you don't take it away because it will be a busha.
The top one.
Top challah.
Yeah, so we're about to talk about that. These are these you this like this is a simon you can't make up. Like you just like this is so this simon is so Jewish, right? The laws and the intricacies of like how to cut a challah, how to angle the challahs when you hold them. It's it reminds me when who was his name? Elon Gold, who's that comedian? He has a whole bit about how a Jew would have like the laws of of a Christmas tree and how you bring it in and how you wrap the Christmas lights from right to left, not left to right. Like this is when you're making a comedy skit, you're basing it off of this. So let's then again, I appreciate actually all the halachos that are here, but you can understand why it's like, oh my gosh, this is like a little much. So let's see here. Shtei kikaros. Zecher laman. Why do we have two loaves? This is actually one of the most important parts that comes out of this simon, is that we have two loaves to remember the man. Why? Dichtiv, in the pasuk in Bishalach it says laktu lechem mishneh, that they would collect a double portion of bread. So therefore, even though on Shabbos nothing fell, by the way, but we remember the miracle that happened on Erev Shabbos, on Shabbos, by having two loaves of bread. V'gam b'Yom Tov torach livtzosh al shtei kikaros. You also have to do this on Yom Tov. Why? Many hold, there's a madrash that says that the same rule applied. The same rule applied on Erev Yom Tov in the Midbar. That before Yom Tov, a double portion would fall, and so therefore on Yom Tov we also have two challahs to remember the miracle that happened Erev Yom Tov in the Midbar. All right. V'gam hanoshim mechuyavos b'lechem mishnah. The women also have this obligation of lechem mishnah. Shahayu gam kein b'nei Haman. I mean, they also benefited from the miracle of the man in the desert. V'im yotzei b'lechem mishnah b'pasal b'kisnin. The question about whether you can be yotzei lechem mishnah with pasal b'kisnin, with something like cake. By the way, pasal b'kisnin comes from the word kis. Kis is like a pocket, bread that was stuffed with something. So that's a discussion that comes up in Kuf Samechet Sif Zayin. I was looking in there last night. That's a more extensive discussion about Pasal Vakisnin. Can it count as Lechem Mishnah? There are those who say it can count as Lechem Mishnah. Of course, you won't be surprised to find that there are those who say it cannot. Absolutely not. The Sfaradim are very machmir when it comes to Lechem Mishnah. And just the bread in general, by the way, just bread in general, they will only make hamotzi on water chal. Right, because even egg is taints the sort of the status of the bread,
and therefore you couldn't make a motzi on it.
Right. The question is, can you make hamotzi if you're going to have a meal? Right. Pasal b'kisnin, even Ashkenazim pasal b'kisnin in the brachas mizonos. But if you're going to make a meal out of pasal b'kisnin, so then you can make hamotzi on it. If you were going to sit down and you take a whole, I always say it's a ridiculous case, but let's say you take a whole loaf of babka, you sit down with a fork and knife, you stick your napkin right in here, and you're going to go to town on a whole babka. That's the whole meal, and you probably should wash and make hamotzi before you have the whole babka, because that's the meal. If you're going to be koveya a whole meal over pasal v'kisnin, you should make hamotzi. But we'll talk more next time about that. I'll go a little more into detail about whether you can use pasal b'kisnin for hamotzi for lechem mishnah. The status of hamotzi is that's a law that's already on the books. We talk about that. The question is, what's the law on the books about using pasal b'kisnin for that? So we'll talk about that next time.
We're talking about raisin policy. Okay.
Sfaradim, I don't think we use maize. That would be
Not a normal challah. I mean, that's the same idea as a cake. A lot of people.
Yeah, there's the people who talk about with the chocolate challahs. That people put the chocolate in the challahs, right? Is that considered pasal b'kisnin, or is that just a challah that's got some something on it? Yeah, I mean, some of those challahs are like a babka, right? Yeah, and people do make hamotzi on them, and so we're gonna talk more about that next time. I just want to do one point about the shlemos. Let's read a bathe. Shlemos, you're supposed to make it on whole loaves, and we'll talk more about this in the next week, as well. If let's say you have a cake, you have some pas, that's burnt on one side. Okay, you burnt a little bit on this side. So, that way, what challah doesn't have some part of it that it's got a little bit of a burn thing there, right? But you haven't cut yet from that challah. There are those that say Yeshu Amr Yotzim Bo Le'inin Lechem Mishnah. It still counts. You burns a little bit of it. Okay, it doesn't matter though. You can still make a Lechem Mishnah. We use that as Lechem Mishnah because it's a good chal. Okay, part of it got burnt, but it's okay. I am B'Shari Tshuva. You can look at the Shari Tshuva for more on that. But he says here, Im Ein Lo Pas Shlema Einam Akev. It's a very important rule. So I wanted to get it in there. If you don't have a whole loaf of bread, let's say you actually don't, you for whatever reason, you end up in a situation like, ooh, I don't have 2 whole loaves. Maybe I have one and I don't have a second one, or I have nothing. He says, not akev. You can still fulfill the idea of lechem mishneh. Not ideal, by the way. Not ideal at all, by the way. Aruch HaShulchan doesn't like it. He doesn't like it, but he also agrees. It's not ma'akev. Yachol lekadesh afilu al pas kazayis pas. You can even make, I don't have wine. I don't have bread, whole loaves of bread. I have just pieces of bread. I have slices of bread. So I can make the kiddush even if it's on a kazayis of pas. Again, v'nachon linhog shezeh shabot. Sorry, better not to do that. But if you're in dire straits, you can rely on that. V'nachon linhog shezeh shabotzei yechaven liftor bebirchas hamotzi kol ha'mesurim. When it's correct that when the person is breaking the 2 loaves, he should have in mind everybody, right? Like, oh no, don't worry, I'll have a slice of bread from I'll have my own challah roll. No. There's this inyan of holding 2 loaves together and saying we're breaking from the Lechem Mishnah. By the way, even when we did here in the shul, if you remember, on Purim night or Purim leading into Shabbos, we had this rolling meal that turned into Shabbos, and we didn't make hamotzi because we had been yotze on the hamotzi from before. You still had to hold 2 loaves and break from them because there's a mitzvah of Lechem Mishnah, of breaking from Lechem Mishnah, even though there was no bracha there. The Gam Yomar. You should say to all the Masurim to be yotze with my bracha. So that everybody should fulfill from the idea of lechem mishnah, right? Of double having bread from the 2 loaves. And then we'll talk about this more next time because Richie was talking about it before. Yomar birshus rabosai. You should say birshus rabosai. Why? Right, with the permission of my masters. And the reason really is because I want them to be yotze. Listen. So they're saying, hey, listen up. Right? Afal pishu balabai. So God will even know about the person's like, he doesn't have to ask for shus from me. He's a gadol ador. Why is he asking me for shus? Right? It's a humble way of saying, please pay attention to what I'm saying. All right, we'll stop here. I actually think we'll probably finish this segment because it's very short. Maybe next week. And we'll talk more about the Pastor of a Kissin issue hopefully next Sunday. So have a wonderful day, everybody, and see you soon. All right, I'm gonna turn this off.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Simeon. Take care.